Welcome back to our channel, where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her royal family. We are excited to share the following news: Catherine's heartbreaking confession over marriage crisis after Prince William's hidden letter exposed. A close member of the Wales family said that the Prince and Princess of Wales had endured a tumultuous period after the revelation of Prince William's concealed letter, which unveiled a startling reality that has unsettled the marriage of Princess Catherine and Prince William. In this video, we will uncover the contents of the concealed letter and its implications for the marital problems of the Prince and Princess of Wales. According to those associated with Adelaide Cottage, the events that transpired earlier this spring seem to be very authentic, despite resembling a narrative from a theatrical performance. Reports indicate that Princess Catherine, renowned globally for her steadfast composure, grace under pressure, and stoicism, has encountered a very distressing breaking point. The catalyst for the next events was the finding of a solitary cream-colored package inside the tranquil confines of her husband's study, rather than a public scandal or media frenzy. She purportedly disclosed to a close friend many days post-event, stating, "I never anticipated he would withhold anything of this kind from me." The discovery sent shockwaves through the foundations of their marriage, prompting the future queen to reevaluate the fundamental structure of her life with Prince William. Insiders inside the royal family assert that the book she read significantly influenced her. The letter's contents were described as more catastrophic than anybody could imagine. This was not due to a sensational affair. Instead, it sprang from a significant breakdown of trust over the future of the marriage and the stability of the monarchy. This narrative recounts the day when silence spoke more than words, and the efforts of the Princess of Wales to save her marriage from the ruin of a concealed reality. Morning of the object's revelation. A disquieting silence preceded the morning. Catherine rose earlier than usual, startled from slumber by an unexplainable concern that unsettled her. The morning light lighting Windsor Great Park was hazy and diffuse, successfully penetrating the thick drapes in the master bedroom. Her body immediately executed familiar actions throughout her morning ritual, including the kettle's whistle, the precise slice of bread, and the porcelain cup taken from the cupboard. She performed her routine in a mechanical manner. In contrast, her thoughts were unfocused, centered on notions she could not fully recognize. Recently, William exhibited a sense of alienation. At the same time, he was neither hostile nor distant, but he was mentally detached. Even when situated directly behind her at events, his grins seemed to require significant effort from his facial muscles, lacking engagement from his eyes. The spontaneous and fluid repartee that had characterized their connection since college was absent in his chats, giving the impression that they were contrived. In the early hours of the morning, she visited William's private study to divert her attention. It was a straightforward responsibility. Still, she planned to return a set of cufflinks he had left on the dresser. This was a straightforward domestic task, included into their everyday regimen. The study exuded a subtle, earthy fragrance of William's cologne, among the scents of leather and ancient paper. It served as a refuge of serenity for her, a haven where she could gather with others for collaboration. He systematically arranged his accessories into velvet-lined compartments, and she unlocked the drawer containing them. At that moment, she acknowledged the anomaly. He had intentionally positioned a cream-colored formal envelope under a huge photographic volume on his desk. It was not located in an easily accessible area. Rather, it was obscured from her sight. The writing prompted her to stop breathing. The unique way in which William inscribed her name, Catherine, was shown on the book's cover. He crafted each letter with the same attention he used to his professional responsibilities. Catherine's touch became icy, Her heart started to gallop and pound against her ribs, an instinctive, primitive response to danger that occurs before the conscious mind can evaluate the threat of the situation. What incentive may her spouse possess for concealing a letter meant for her? What is the rationale for inscribing her name on an item just to obscure it, as if expecting it to remain hidden from public view? With quivering fingers, she seized the envelope. The paper has a solid and luxurious feel due to its cotton content. The wax seal suffered no damage whatsoever. The words were confined, their silence significantly resonant. She positioned the letter on the little reading chair near the window, the same chair where she had previously devoted many hours to casually reviewing briefing papers. Despite the chair's antiquated appearance, it was positioned in the spot where William had previously spent a rainy day and enjoyed laughing with her. The fragmented components, Catherine leisurely seated herself. She sat with the packet on her lap as if it were an unexploded device. While tracing her name with her fingers, she emulated the loops distinctive of William's penmanship. She was aware that she wanted to open it, but she also had a profound knowledge that once she perused its contents, the before era would finish. She had this knowledge with a conviction that transcended rational reasoning. Her eyes filled with tears before she had even opened it. They unexpectedly fell upon her, impairing her vision. Her body seemed aware of a truth her intellect sought to reject, that secrets inside a marriage are never beneficial. She had labored breathing and a constricted chest owing to an unspecified anxiety. The early light highlighted the envelope, making the scenario peculiar and somewhat surreal. The light illuminated her hands, revealing the gift. A part of her wanted to return it. She would behave as if she had never encountered it, to preserve the serenity for an additional day. Nevertheless, the box is already unsealed. She was aware of the letter's presence. The experience of ignorance was far more adverse than the actuality. She endeavored to get her finger inside the flap while her hands trembled significantly. A soft crack like a gunshot echoed throughout the quiet room, signifying the rupture of the seal. Folded bedding awaited your arrival inside. Merely paper and ink. These are just words. How can something so basic possess the capacity to annihilate a whole world? She opened the pages of the book. The first words were, "My beloved Catherine." The welcome seemed to be disingenuous. As she read, the ambiance in the room seemed to become denser, becoming oppressive and burdensome. Each phrase impacted the recipient's body with the force of a strike. William documented meetings of which she was entirely oblivious, decisions made about their assets, and the duchy without her consultation, and a situation deteriorating rapidly involving trusted advisors she had never encountered. The third paragraph, however, was an emotional revelation that destabilized the room. He expressed significant doubt not about his affections for her, but concerning his ability to protect her from the organization for which they were both worked. To protect her, he confessed to making unilateral judgments that in fact jeopardized their status. In his work, he articulated his regrets and disclosed a latent existence of strain that he had masked to maintain the facade of the strong prince. How might you feasibly do that? She spoke into the entirely empty room. The first impact was a chilling wave that rendered her immobile. Subsequently, an intense and searing fury ensued. Conversely, under the surface was a shattered heart, unmitigated and very terrible heartbreak. She persisted in reading despite her innate instincts urging her to stop. In his message, he lamented his cowardice in hiding this letter instead of addressing her. He expressed his affection for her while simultaneously undermining her autonomy. As she tried to retain the letter, it slipped from her fingers and the pages plummeted to the ground. Catherine collapsed from the chair into the carpet because her legs could not sustain her weight. She curled into a ball, and the disintegration encompassed all aspects. She emitted a succession of anguished sobs, the kind of sobbing that induces throat ache and leaves the body in a condition of profound distress, in a cosmos that had abruptly transformed into sand. She pressed her forehead into the ground in an effort to find something tangible. The architect of the enigma. Conversely, Prince William was engaged in a session, although his thoughts were adrift. William has a pleasant demeanor, and was the kind of person capable of discerning when someone else was experiencing challenges. He derived immense pleasure from his attentiveness. Conversely, despite his thorough preparation, he had made a choice that was now afflicting him. When the responsibilities of his new position seemed to spiral beyond his control, he had written the letter months before at a period of trepidation and confusion, when he felt inundated by the circumstances. After he addressed and sealed it, he abruptly experienced a lack of resolve. He had hidden it instead of either relinquishing it to Catherine, his partner of equal standing, or incinerating it. He persuaded himself that he needed time to organize his thoughts and choose how to address the matter appropriately. The duration evolved from days to weeks to subsequent months. The dust started to gather on the envelope, and his feelings of guilt intensified. Why did I not only ignite it? Throughout many nights, he had silenced his thoughts as Catherine slumbered beside him. On the day of its composition, he remembered that it had been pouring. In an attempt to explain the incomprehensible, he reminisced about the feeling of grasping the pen in his hand. He documented the financial restructuring he permitted without her agreement, a gamble intended to secure their children's future, which ultimately failed. He expressed his concern over his inability to meet her expectations. As he engaged in a high-level briefing, a sense of dread started to overwhelm him. It proved to be prescient. The entrance to the conference room opened at that moment. It was revealed to be Peter, a senior member of his domestic staff. Peter's expression revealed a degree of tension that made William's stomach drop. Typically, Peter exhibited a demeanor of total calmness and composure, embodying the essence of British restraint. Upon relocating to the hallway for a private discussion, Peter courteously expressed his apologies to the guy for disrupting their talk. "It is essential for you to know that the princess was in your study early in the morning. She resided there throughout that era. The Earth's axis was tilted." William's knuckles became pale as he gripped the door frame tightly. "Is this about my research?" Upon hearing his own voice, he saw it as strange, far, and hollow. "I agree, sir." Upon her departure, she seemed to be in a state of confusion. Upon receiving more information, William did not hesitate. As he traversed the hallway, his speed generated anxiety among his security personnel. An intense anguish throbbed in his ribs as his heart beat against them. Conversely, the ticking bomb he had erroneously assumed would never explode has now detonated. The conflict that occurs. When William returned to Adelaide Cottage, the house was filled with a heavy quiet that was packed with a tension that was almost electrical. He approached the topic with the seriousness of a man who was marching toward his own death. The door was slightly ajar when it closed. He pushed it open with it. Near the window, Catherine was observing the scene. Despite the fact that she had managed to keep her composure, the scars of her anguish were visible on her face. Even though her complexion was pale and her eyes were crimson, she maintained a tight stance. Like a shield or even a weapon, she pressed the letter to her chest as if it were a weapon. It was a scarcely audible whisper when he spoke the word Catherine. She made a turn. The expression that she delivered to him was one that he had never seen before. The expression on his face was one of utter sorrow and rage, a look that stripped him of all his titles and left him with nothing more than a man who had let down his wife. What she said was, "We need to discuss." There was no tremor in her voice. It was a chilly and brittle steel. In an act of submission, William took a step forward while raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Please, Catherine, tell me. I am able to explain." She stopped him by saying, "Don't. Do not pronounce my name in such a manner. As if you still have the authority to communicate with me in a manner that is affectionate." She brought out the letter. "At what point were you going to let me know? Or were you just going to remain oblivious to my existence for the rest of my life, holding the belief that a relationship that did not exist existed?" The words, "I never intended for you to discover it that way," came out of William's mouth as his composure began to deteriorate. She rebuked him by saying, "You never intended for me to discover it at all," and her voice became more elevated. "As far as I can tell, it is the truth. You authored this, endorsed it with my name, and then concealed it. You have made a deliberate decision each and every day for a period of months to conceal information from me." "I was attempting to provide you protection." William screamed out, the justification being so feeble that even he found it insulting. "Please shield me." The sound of Catherine's laughter was a harsh and brittle one. "William, you were not offering me any protection. You were attempting to safeguard yourself. In doing so, you were guarding your pride. You came to the conclusion that I was either too feeble to deal with the facts or too insignificant to be the subject of consultation." "No, no." He begged me to not do it. In the chair that was directly across from her, he sat down and buried his face in his hands. I felt embarrassed. I made choices about the investments and the personnel, and I believed that I could resolve the issue before it manifested itself in your life. It was my hope that if I could simply make it disappear, I would not have to see the dissatisfaction that you are feeling in your eyes. It was with a cruel tone that she remarked, "So you picked falsehoods instead. When you were concealing this significant aspect of our life, you looked me in the eye when we were eating breakfast, and you held my hand when we went to engagements. You are not providing protection, William. It is a kind of betrayal." William raised his head, tears beginning to run down his cheeks. "It is true. Because I am aware of this, I despise myself. I am willing to do whatever in order to have it back. I am so incredibly, utterly, absolutely sorry." She watched as he fell apart before her eyes. She had a part of her that wanted to console him. After spending so much time together, that urge had been ingrained in her DNA. However, a more powerful aspect of her, the aspect that had been shaped by the intense scrutiny of the public, prevented her from moving on. She said, "Sorry is not enough," as she apologized. "You cannot erase the harm by saying sorry. You are not able to restore the trust that you have broken. The fact that the person I loved the most in the world chose to treat me like an outsider in my own marriage is something that I will never forget." She then positioned the letter on the desk that was in the middle of them. "I need some time. This is something that I need to give some thought to on the question of whether or not we can recover from this." She turned around and left the room, leaving him to deal with the stillness that he had brought about alone by his actions. Reflection in the Garden of Repose. Catherine glided around the home like a ghost, desperately trying to get away from the walls that seemed to be closing in on her. She exited the house and entered the garden. When the sun rose in the late morning, it was so brilliant that its cheerfulness was almost annoying. There were birds singing in the bushes, completely ignorant to the idea that her world had just come to an end. It was a place where she and William had sat numerous times, and she made her way to the seat that was located under the ancient oak tree. She sat down for a moment, feeling empty within. A profound and excruciating tiredness was remaining behind as the adrenaline from the battle began to wear off. Her thoughts took her back over their past. When she visited St. Andrews, she saw the young William who was honest and vulnerable. The guy on the altar was visible to her. She had a meeting with the man who was the father of her children. Did she have feelings for a version of him that did not present itself? Or had the pressure from the crown gradually undermined the guy she knew, transforming him into someone who thought that keeping secrets was an essential coping mechanism for survival? There was a butterfly that landed on the armrest next to her, and its wings gradually began to beat. While she was watching it, Catherine made an effort to bring herself back to the here and now. At that moment, she became aware that she had a choice. It was possible for her to let this ruin her. She had the option of withdrawing, becoming resentful, and leading a separate life inside the marriage, just as a great number of royal spouses had done before her. Alternately, she may engage in combat, not because it is a fairy tale, but because it is something factual. She came to the realization that the letter was not the only source of her fury. The issue was one of agency. Princess of Wales was the title she held. She would one day become queen. It would be a mistake to treat her like a porcelain doll and store her away on a shelf shielding her from the dirty reality of their existence. It was necessary for the dynamic to shift in order for them to continue. A resolute determination started to take shape in her chest. Before the test, she had no idea that she had a core of steel. It was a core of steel. She would not refuse to remain shattered on the ground. A fresh course of action for their marriage would be something she would insist on. This is the resolution. Following a period of 1 hour, Catherine went back to the research. William was still there, sitting in the exact same spot where she had left him, and he focused his attention on the letter. As soon as she walked in, he instantly got up, and his eyes were filled with anxiousness. She sat down on the other side of him. Her demeanor was serene yet solemn, and her face was in a dry state. It was she who added, "I have been thinking." "Catherine, she said. Her interruption was soft, and she said, "Listen to me. I have some inquiries." The letter included a few ambiguous references, including changes in personnel and financial structures. It is imperative that you, William, be completely honest, not the version of the reality that you believe I am capable of dealing with. It is the true whole truth. Would you be able to provide me with that? He responded with a raspy voice. "Yes," William answered. "I am able to. I am going there." That is exactly what he did. William proceeded to lay out everything for the subsequent 2 hours. The terrible investments, the consultants who had misled him, and the terror that had set in when he learned the severity of the mistake were all reasons that he described. He revealed his fear, his embarrassment, and his desperation to her, removing the monarchical facade that he had been wearing. After he had done, there was silence in the room. "Why did you not have faith in me?" she inquired at long last. "I cannot help but constantly go back to that aspect. Are you of the opinion that I am too fragile?" In response, William leaned forward and murmured, "No." "You are the most powerful person I am familiar with. Due to my lack of strength, I chose not to inform you. It was too much for me to endure for you to see my failure." In response, Catherine said, "That is not how a partnership operates. Your humiliation contributed to your isolation, but it also contributed to my isolation." William. "I am doubtful that I will ever be able to trust you again. It is not blindly, not like it was previously." Words that were both weighty and accurate hovered in the air. "Yes, I do understand," he said. She proceeded by saying, However, it is feasible that a new form of trust may exist. It is one that is more conscious, an environment in which you are honest even when it hurts, and in which I am permitted to ask questions without you feeling as if you are being attacked. Taking a moment to stop, she looked at the guy with whom she had created her life. It is not a promise that I will remain here forever if anything like this occurs again. However, I am prepared to give it a go, in the event that you are prepared to put in the effort required to be truthful. William said, I am, and for the very first time that day, his voice sounded confident and certain. According to Catherine, whatever it takes. Catherine got to her feet. She reached over to the desk and picked up the letter. She decided against ripping it up and instead opened the top drawer of the desk and put it inside directly on top of the drawer. It was her advice to leave it there. Please take note, a reminder of the consequences that result from concealing things. She extended her hand to speak. A tentative gesture, an invitation across a gap. It was a gesture of invitation. While he accepted it, William's grip was tight and his hand was slightly trembling. After leaving the study together, they strolled out of the room side by side. There was no healing for them. There would be a jagged line in the history of their marriage, and the scar of the letter would stay. Nevertheless, as they walked out into the hallway facing the remainder of the day and the remainder of their lives, they were at least headed in the same direction. The catastrophe was gone, and in its place was the icy and laborious process of reconstruction. The Princess of Wales, on the other hand, started her career journey with the truth. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and say goodbye for now.